I'm going to be sharing some tips and tricks that I've learned as I was going through and creating our epoxy countertops, including the cost and the tools we use. So stay tuned. I watched hundreds of hours on how to do this epoxy countertops, and there are a couple of lessons that I learned that I didn't catch in my YouTube's watching, so hopefully these will help you as well. First off, I want to say that I used the Stone Coat countertop epoxy. I looked online, there are a lot of different versions out there, but honestly I went with them because of the sheer amount of videos that they had on YouTube, along with a lot of the videos from RK3 Designs. They really helped me figure out what I wanted. They had so many tutorials. It was really great for me to feel comfortable enough in order to start. I also do like their website, stonecoatcountertops.com. They recently added, after I did mine, a way that you can help kind of go through and figure out really what you need. Obviously, you have all options available. Yes, Stone Coat Countertops is a little bit more expensive, but I thought that was worth it for my peace of mind, and the fact that they had the Art Coat version, which added the UV protection, which in an RV is really helpful. One other thing to consider before doing this is the weight. MDF is actually pretty heavy. A 4x8 sheet of 3/4 inch is somewhere between 90 and 95 pounds. That doesn't include the weight of your sinks and your faucets. I am guessing that we added about 120 pounds based upon this modification. So take that into consideration if your entire rig can handle that additional weight. Building our countertops in our RV wasn't difficult, but it was really time-consuming. I talked a lot about building these countertops in our previous video, so if you're interested in that, make sure to check that out once you're done here. As I was researching this, I couldn't find an easy list of tools and supplies that I needed to get this job done, so that's where we're going to start right now. I am going to go through this tools list rather quickly, but you can check out any additional details on our website. Just check in the description below. The first are sawhorses. You need something in order to cut all of this wood. You also need a circular saw, and you also need a straight edge, so your saw cuts don't look like a 4-year-old cut them. Gotta love the power tools. Clamps to hold down that straight edge, a jigsaw to cut corners and holes for the sinks and the oven if you have one, a router to round the top and bottom edges of your countertop, sander for cleaning up those routed edges when you mess them up, sanding Bondo and sanding between base coats and epoxy. And if you're going to do edges, you also need a 23 gauge micro pin nailer, an air compressor, and air compressor hose in order to do this. You may want spare paint cans or spray paint cans or paint triangles to keep your MDF off the table. You need a torch, and if you are in an area that is not heated, you may want to have an electric heater, or in our case, a Mr. Buddy heater on top of it. And last but not least, you need a location where you can minimize temperature and airflow during this entire process. And if you're on the road, that's probably your biggest challenge.
Epoxy is very particular when it comes to temperatures. You need to stay around 70 degrees for at least the first 24 hours.
I put plastic up in order to keep the temperatures in here warmer. I am in a shed, which really does help, but night times it gets really cold. This stuff likes to be right around 72 degrees the whole time. Managing that, especially in the winter months, is a little bit challenging, even though we're in North Carolina. So we've got some heaters in here, a lot more tape around the windows and stuff to minimize drafts. I kept the electric heater running all the time and added the buddy heater from 11 p.m. until I woke up the next morning. Once I got up, I put those epoxy containers in front of the electric heater and then waited until the shed temperature got back up to 70 degrees, which was usually by about 11 a.m. I had the luxury of a nearly empty shed in order to build these countertops. But that same area was the same place where I was cutting the wood, routing the edges, bondoing, and then sanding again. So the area was quite messy. I used a leaf blower to blow out a lot of the dust and swept probably 3 or 4 times and then let it settle overnight before I even thought of doing the epoxy. There's just sawdust everywhere. Look at the floor. Ugh. And even then, I ended up with dust everywhere. So if you're pouring epoxy countertops in this type of environment, don't expect perfection. One of the things I'm screwed up while doing the epoxy was estimating the right amount of epoxy. And my mistake cost me 5 days because it wasn't easy to get this stuff in a quick fashion. When trying to figure out the amount of MDF I needed, I did a little geeking out, and there was a neat web tool that could optimize your cuts on whatever sheet of plywood you wanted. It is called the CutList Optimizer. This was really neat. It was cool to know that I'm optimizing the space and could give me some extra MDF to make my sample pieces. So based off of that cut list, I needed approximately 32 square feet for my 4x8 sheet of MDF. According to Stone Coat, we were planning on using about 3 ounces per square foot for each coat. I was going to do both a first coat and then a flood coat to help protect that. So if you do that calculation, we end up with needing 192 ounces. And 2 gallons should be more than enough for this project. But I decided to change my mind, of course, and added those backsplashes. Wow, they're definitely worth it. Oh, you can't even see this one because of all the crap, but yeah, pretty there. And I think this one would have just looked weird without a backsplash, so I thought it looks nice, which added 42 ounces more epoxy. That really wasn't that big of a deal. It was still under that 2 gallons. My problem came with the fact that I didn't use 3 ounces per square foot. I used more like 3.5 ounces because I couldn't seem to get around the edges with just that 3 ounces. And what happened as a result? I was short epoxy. My recommendation is simply to get more epoxy than you expect. When they say 3 to 4 ounces, assume 4. Go on the higher side. I think that would have helped me and ultimately saved me several days of waiting for the epoxy to be shipped.
Do practice boards. There's no way I would have done this and done as nice as I think it looks without doing practice boards. My first one was total crap.
For some reason, I thought I really wanted a much darker countertop. This was my first attempt. This was also for me to try out a bunch of techniques and kind of to learn what this stuff is about. This looks nothing like I'm planning, but it did tell me that I did not want a darker background. My second sample board is this, a little bit more, or a lot more subdued, much lighter colors. And after going through that, I think that's more of the style that I want.
Give yourself a lot of time to build those countertops. They're not easy, and in RVs, you've got a lot more angles than you would think. We probably pulled in and out the countertop in the kitchen 8 or 9 times just to get that piece right. Take your time, do it right.
The one that you butchered over there.
Oh, yeah. So the pretty stuff is on the top, but on the bottom, I didn't have enough, so I gouged the heck out of this. But I think it'll be fine. You can tell it's a little wavy there, but it still works. When I was working on the countertops, my sawhorses were really low, so I didn't see the sides as well as I wanted to, and you end up getting like weird drips and stuff here where it didn't quite go over well. So definitely watch your edges and even underneath when you're coming in. Well, so far I'm really liking all of the epoxy countertops. I'm not quite done yet, but I am going to show you one of the many probably mistakes that I made. So here is the underside of our fireplace, and you can kind of see where the epoxy left off and then the main underside is, and that's where a lot of the epoxy, the darker epoxy, just seemed to pool and show. So I'm adding
some of the white to try to diffuse that. It's not going to be 100%, but I'm hoping that I can make it look a little bit more tolerable. So the countertop is here. I'm going down my steps, and you can see the underside of that really well, and I didn't think about that the whole friggin' way. So I think I'm going to have to sand that off and kind of paint it. Crap, I never thought of looking underneath. Dang it. So if you come in our camper and you comment about the undersides of my cabinet, I will give you the evil stare. If you're using Stone Coat Counter Epoxy, I would recommend getting the Ultimate Top Coat. I wasn't originally planning on that, but then I realized that we really needed to not use the countertops for about 7 days. With us needing to get this done quicker, that wasn't going to happen. With the Ultimate Top Coat, once you put that on, we installed ours 24 hours later. Obviously, we're still doing very light use, but we were able to cut out our openings for our faucets and our sink and our stove, and then kind of get things rolling. I ended up changing my mind a little bit. They have an additional product called the Ultimate Top Coat, or people call it UTC. And it's supposed to give the surface of the epoxy a little bit better heat resistance, scratch resistance, that kind of thing. And being in a camper, boy, that sounded really good. But I was a bit nervous about it. There had been some complaints online about it looking too much like an orange peel texture, but I thought, you know what, I need to try it. Because of how we use things, it seemed like a good idea. Do be gentle, this was a sample piece, my edges are crap, but you should hopefully get an idea. It's very shiny, but then everything else past here is this matte surface. If you put your hand over it, it feels very smooth. Not too bad, although this is actually not 100% cured. It's about 4 hours in, so I'm messing with this probably more than I should. Hopefully that is a good feel of it. So as you can see that coming up, that shininess is definitely reduced on the piece afterwards. There is a little bit of a texture, but really it's not bad at all. It's only after about 4 hours maybe of drying. So again, sample piece, so I'm screwing with it a bit more. I think the best location to see this Ultimate Top Coat matte is on our dining room table. Although it's not a completely sunny day outside, I'm not getting a lot of glare off of the table. It feels good, although I don't know if you can see that. There is just a slight texture that if you really look close, you can see it. If I'm out here, I don't see it, but there is just the tiniest little pattern, which in my opinion does not bother me. It just looks better, in my opinion, than the gloss. I'm absolutely glad that we got this, and the fact that this is going to help reduce scratches. Our old countertops looked like crap after a couple of years of heavy usage. I'm hoping that these will last more, but I think time will tell. And the next part is the fun part. Buying all the stuff that you need to create the countertops and put that epoxy on there. Beyond the paint, the MDF, and the epoxy, there are a lot of little things that you may want to have on hand before you even start this project. You're going to need stuff like plastic cups and popsicle sticks and chip brushes and rollers and all kinds of stuff. If you want to have a good start on that list, check out our webpage. The link is in the description below. And finally, really, how much did this cost us in order to do this upgrade? So if you've been following our renovation project, we have had several aspects of that. I'm going to kind of get a layer effect of each of those projects. For the countertop project alone, this is assuming that you had already purchased all of the tools that was needed. That cost us $850. And that was to replace the kitchen countertops, the bathroom countertops, living room table, our mantle, and the backsplashes in both the kitchen and the bathroom. So that's not too bad for $850. But I need to look at this from a holistic standpoint. You can't have the countertops without sinks and the faucets and the new stove. adding that into the whole mix brings that total renovation project up to $2,100. And if you include all of the painting that we did of all of our cabinets, that adds another $300. So we are totaling about $2,400 for everything we've done on the inside of our camper. And granted, it did take us 2 months, but I'm thinking that was not a bad deal for the results that we got. And thank you if you stuck around to listen to us about this project. We are really excited about this, but we're finally going to get back on the road and actually start traveling instead of working on stuff. So I hope you stay around for next week and see where we're headed. Until then, talk to you later. Bye-bye.